Emily stood frozen in the basement, her breath shallow, the air thick with must and dust. The secret room before her was a living nightmare, an old bed with a thin blanket, walls covered in candid photos of her, in moments she thought she was alone. Emily hadn't planned to leave the city, but she did. An accident, a bitter breakup, and an indescribable loss pushed her to vanish from what she once called life. She packed everything into an old car and turned onto a red dirt road leading to a remote small town in rural America, a place where fallen maple leaves blanketed the paths and no one asked too many questions. The house she rented sat nearly 3 miles from town, isolated from any neighbors. It was a weathered 2-story wooden house with a steep black-tiled roof, moss-stained from years of neglect, and a faded wooden porch stretching to the overgrown backyard, where ancient oak trees leaned as if they'd given up fighting time. The landlord, an old man of few words, handed her the keys with a nod when Emily asked about previous tenants. "No one stays long," he said, turning to leave with a vague parting warning. "Don't open the basement door at night." Emily gave a faint smile. She didn't buy into local superstitions. Every old house had a history, and old folks often had wild imaginations. Stepping inside, she took a deep breath. Old wood, damp air, and musty dust filled her senses. The ceilings were high, the hallways long and dim, and the wooden floors creaked with every step. Her bedroom was upstairs at the far right end. An antique wooden bed sat beneath a window overlooking the forest behind. The attic was locked, and the basement was hidden behind a white-painted door under the stairs, a door that seemed untouched for years. The first day passed in eerie silence. No cars, no voices, only the wind whistling through branches and the steady tick of an old wall clock. That evening, Emily sat by the window, sipping wine and reading a few pages of a book. She tried to embrace the solitude, telling herself this was a fresh start, a new chapter in her life. But as night fell and the house sank into silence, a strange feeling crept in. It wasn't clear, it wasn't intense. It was just like something was watching her, silently and very close. She drifted to sleep, unaware that tonight would be the last time she'd feel the house was merely empty asterisk. In her first days at the new house, Emily tried to adjust to the quiet rhythm of rural life. By day, faint sunlight streamed through dusty windows, warming the rooms in an oddly cozy way. But when night fell, the silence grew thick and heavy, like a moldy blanket draped over the house. On the 4th night, Emily began noticing faint sounds just past midnight. At first, it was only the clatter of wind against the shutters. But gradually, she heard footsteps, slow, steady, like someone walking barefoot around the house. They didn't last long, just a few steps before fading, as if something was watching, considering, then retreating into the dark. Emily chalked it up to her imagination. She wasn't used to sleeping alone in such a remote place. But the next night, it became undeniable. Around 2 a.m., she jolted awake for no clear reason. In the dim darkness, with only faint moonlight filtering through thin curtains, something felt off on the floor. She flicked on the bedside lamp. Footprints, dirty footprints, stark on the wooden floor, stretched from her door, always locked each night to the edge of her bed, then stopped. They were dry like mud left overnight. Emily froze. She didn't dare look around, her eyes fixed on the footprints ending beside where she lay. Nothing else, no one, no sound. She tried to calm herself, reasoning she might have forgotten to lock the door, that they were her own prints, but her heart pounded and a chill ran down her spine. The next morning, as sunlight poured in, everything seemed normal again. The footprints had faded slightly, as if time wanted to hide something. But then Emily found a small object tucked under her bedroom door. It was an old piece of paper, scrawled with messy ink. The words made her breath catch. "Don't be scared, I just want to be closer to you." Her hands shook holding the paper. Logic offered explanations, maybe a cruel prank, maybe sleepwalking, or even a sleep disorder. But deep down, she knew this wasn't a joke. Something was present, very close to her, and it had been right beside her bed each night. Since that night, Emily stopped sleeping soundly. Though she tried to convince herself the note was a sick prank or a stranger's cruel joke, unease gnawed at her. The air in the old house felt different, thick, oppressive, as if something unseen watched her every move, breath, and heartbeat. The following nights grew stranger. One late night, when the town was asleep, Emily woke to the hallway light flickering on. She lay still, heart racing, listening. No other sound, just the faint glow through the door's crack. She crept out to check, and the light went out as if someone knew she was coming. The next morning, she tested the switch. It worked fine. She started noticing small changes she'd initially dismissed as memory lapses. A chair shifted a few inches from where she remembered placing it. A book on the coffee table flipped upside down, though she hadn't touched it. A glass by her bed had smudged fingerprints. None were overtly terrifying, but their accumulation unraveled her mind. Emily bought a night vision security camera and set it up in her bedroom, aimed at the bed and door. It was her last attempt to prove to herself it was all in her head or to catch an intruder. The next morning, she checked her laptop. The video file was gone. The memory card was intact but empty. Disbelieving, she reset the camera, this time using an encrypted backup card. That night, the familiar heavy feeling returned, as if someone stared at her from the dark. In the morning, she checked the backup card. A video just a few minutes long showed only audio, breathing heavy, deep, close to the lens, as if someone stood steps from her bed. No visuals. The breathing lingered, then cut off. The video ended abruptly. Emily shuddered, deleting it instantly, doubting everything around her. One night, drifting into an exhausted sleep, a cold chill shot down her spine. She opened her eyes, not from a sound, but from the distinct feeling of something very close. A hot, damp breath grazed her left cheek. She froze, eyes darting sideways without turning her head. No one was there, just the dim room and the clocks ticking. She bolted upright, heart pounding, scanning frantically. Silence. The next morning, she mustered the courage to visit her neighbor to the right, an elderly woman named Ruth, who'd lived there for over 30 years. When Emily mentioned the footsteps, the note, and other odd events, Ruth's face hardened. After a pause, Ruth pulled Emily inside, shutting the door tightly. In her old kitchen, she placed a hand on Emily's shoulder, voice trembling. "You're not the first, dear." The last tenant, a girl named Carla, spoke of footsteps at night, notes, someone by her bed. She left after 3 weeks, vanished without a word. Emily stared, ice flooding her veins. "Did the police investigate?" she asked. "They did." Found nothing, no signs of break-ins, no clear evidence, just stories and frightened eyes. Emily returned home in silence. Dusk fell fast, casting a cold gray over the tiled roof. In her mind, pieces began to form. But she couldn't believe it. Could something not human be in this house? And worse, did it truly just want to be closer to her? As it wrote, Emily no longer recognized herself. Sleepless nights, fragmented nightmares, and fear grew with every breath. She wasn't just uneasy, she began doubting her own sanity. The more she tried to explain things logically, the more absurdly chilling they became. On a cold, rainy afternoon, Emily resolved to uncover the house's past. She visited the local library, where old records and land maps of Black Hollow were kept. After hours sifting through dusty papers and time-worn files, she found a clue. In 1998, a small family lived in her house, the Bakers. They had one son, Isaac, 15, with severe psychological issues. Described as obsessed with watching others, he kept notes on neighbors, secretly photographed them napping, and isolated himself completely. No one saw Isaac after a winter afternoon that year. The family quietly left town weeks after his disappearance. The file ended with a cold line, "Missing body not found." From that day, the house felt different. Every brick, every corner seemed to whisper, as if someone watched her through them. Emily began searching every nook and cranny and found the first clue. A small paper, wedged in a crack under her bed, old and slightly moldy, but the writing clear. "You smiled so gently today," her hands shook as she pulled it out. Soon, she found another in a kitchen wall crevice. "You're beautiful when you sleep." Then a third hidden in a wardrobe door gap. "You cried last night, don't be sad." Each was handwritten, small and jagged, as if written in the dark. Emily felt violated. These notes weren't from a distant past. They were about her recent actions and emotions. Things only someone present could know. Someone was watching her, intimately aware of her smallest feelings. One night in the heavy silence, Emily pretended to sleep. She lay still, eyes half closed, heart racing as the clock struck 2 a.m. Creaking floorboards sounded. She felt footsteps moving in the hallway, light, slow. The darkness grew thicker. Soft breathing sounded close. Something stood beside her, staring at her face. She didn't dare open her eyes. Then suddenly the footsteps stopped. The room fell silent. Emily snapped her eyes open, flicked on the light, no one. But what froze her was the window curtain swaying, though the window was locked tight, and on the floor, fresh, muddy footprints of a bare foot. The next day, Emily decided to check the basement, a place she'd avoided alone since moving in. Flashlight in hand, she descended the creaky wooden stairs, nothing but dusty old items. Then she noticed a wall section that looked different, as if hastily built to hide something. She grabbed an iron rod from the shed and tapped the wall. A hollow sound echoed, her heart raced. With all her remaining courage, she broke through the bricks. A narrow space appeared, just wide enough to crawl through. A cold, musty smell rose like from deep underground. Emily crawled in. Inside was a small, cell-like room. No windows, just an old, dusty bed. The walls were plastered with dozens of photos of Emily sleeping from various angles. Some showed her dozing on the sofa, crying at night, even stepping out of the bathroom. On a table sat a jar of her hair, tied with rubber bands. Her missing nightgown lay neatly on the bed's pillow. A notebook sat tidily, filled with handwritten lines. "I love how she talks to herself. She's lonely, I know, but I'm here." She couldn't breathe. These weren't recent signs. Someone or something had been with her from day one, silently watching, noting, collecting. No camera caught it, no one was seen, no trace left the house. Emily stood in the secret room, surrounded by chilling evidence, realizing one truth: her stalker never left this house. He lived here with her, right beneath the floor. Emily stood frozen in the basement, her breath shallow, the air thick with must and dust. The secret room before her was a living nightmare, an old bed with a thin blanket, walls covered in candid photos of her in moments she thought she was alone. Sleeping, changing, even sipping morning coffee on the porch. Strands of her hair, cut and tied, sat in a glass jar like a sick trophy. A sweater she thought she'd lost last week lay neatly on the pillow of the strange bed. Emily's throat tightened, everything she'd felt, being watched, hearing breaths, footsteps at night wasn't a delusion. He was always here, just walls away. Footsteps sounded behind her. She spun reflexively, gripping the flashlight. A tall, gaunt man emerged from the shadows, stepping out from a hidden passage linking the bedroom to the basement. The dim light hit his face, high cheekbones, eyes sunken like someone who'd lived too long in darkness. But those eyes, though hollow and wild, were familiar. Emily stepped back, whispering instinctively, "Jacob." He nodded as if he'd waited ages for this. "I knew you'd recognize me." Jacob, her ex, whom she'd left 2 years ago after his controlling, obsessive behavior grew unbearable. She thought he'd left the city, hoped so, but the horrific truth unfolded. When he learned she'd moved into his family's old house, he'd secretly returned and never left. "Emily," he said in a sickeningly sweet tone, "you don't understand. Here, near you, I just want to protect you. You loved me once, remember? You smiled at me every morning, leaned on my shoulder when tired. I just want to keep that." She trembled, backing up. "You stalked me, invaded my life. This isn't love, it's sick." Jacob advanced, his eyes darkening. "No, Emily, it's sacrifice. I've lived like a shadow just to keep you safe. I was there every night when you slept, forgot to turn off the stove, cried alone. I'm the only one who truly cares." Emily glanced toward the exit, but Jacob read her thoughts. He smirked, pulling a key from his pocket. "Don't think about running. I locked the door from outside. No one will hear you." Fear turned to survival instinct. Emily screamed, shoving a nearby bookshelf to block his path. As Jacob dodged, she grabbed the jar of her hair, smashing it on the floor with a sharp crash, and snatched a jagged glass shard. "Stay back, or I'll stab you." Jacob laughed, stepping closer with a twisted smile. "You wouldn't hurt someone you once loved." His words shattered her last illusions. Without hesitation, she lunged, slashing his arm with the glass and bolting for the stairs. The basement door was locked. She pounded it, screaming, kicking the hinges. Jacob shouted from below, "Emily, you'll hurt yourself. I don't want that. I love you." Well, she didn't answer. In desperation, her eyes caught a wooden shelf to the left, holding old tools, including a lighter and a small can of fireplace fuel. Her hands shook as she poured fuel onto the rotting rug beneath her, flicking the lighter. The smell of gasoline filled the air. Jacob ran up, but too late. Flames erupted fiercely in the passageway. Emily threw a fuel-soaked cloth into the fire, creating a roaring wall of flames blocking him. "Why?" Jacob screamed, tears mixing with rage. "Because I'm not afraid of you anymore," Emily replied, voice icy. Smoke filled the basement. As Jacob staggered back, Emily kicked out a small glass panel by the main door, an emergency exit. She crawled through, tearing her sleeve and scraping her skin, but finally escaped. Outside, the night fog stung like needles. She ran to the nearest neighbor's house, not daring to look back. Behind her, flames spread from the basement windows, painting the house in a hellish red glow. Jacob, once a cherished memory, had become obsession incarnate, but Emily was no longer the passive girl of the past. She'd faced him, fought, and now she'd survived. When the police arrived, the old house was engulfed in flames. Black smoke billowed from the basement where her nightmare had been confined. Emily couldn't recall how she escaped that basement, only the smell of burning hair, Jacob's anguished screams like a wild animal, and the searing heat on her face as she fled. Emily was taken to the hospital. The trauma, weight loss, eyes sunken from sleeplessness. But she was alive, and that was all that kept her from breaking. The police assured her Jacob could no longer harm her. He and the house where her nightmare began were reduced to ash. Emily moved to a new place, a small suburban apartment with large windows facing a quiet garden. She tried to start over with therapy, sleeping pills, and dreams filled with smoke and gasping breaths. Sometimes she woke at night, thinking she heard footsteps, but reassured herself, just aftershocks. One ordinary morning, as Emily brewed coffee, she found a piece of paper slipped under her door. Her heart raced, breath quickening. Her trembling hands picked up the note, the slanted, hauntingly familiar handwriting. "I'm sorry for scaring you. I just want to be closer to you." Emily froze. Outside the window, a single golden leaf fell gently.